Women are very good at building relationships, about understanding the nuances of relationships, adapting to different personalities, and we know how to adapt to stressful situations. I would have said to people, don't work for a bad manager. You're not going to win. You're not going to convince them. Those stressful, tough situations, you have to stick it out for at least a little bit to try to learn the lessons that you need for the next role.
Hi, everyone. We are joined today with Caroline Gadaleta. She is the Executive Managing Director and Head of Tri-State and the Greater Northeast, and the Greater Philadelphia, region for property management at JLL. She is also the author of Feed Your Future, which is a phenomenal book. I highly recommend it. I read it. I love it. It's great. And we're here to talk to executive women like Caroline, and we're asking them the questions in a male-dominated industry like commercial real estate that we're in. What are the great tips and tricks and great philosophies that we can use to be able to apply to our careers to be in similar positions like they are? We're asking them what are the things that they utilize to be able to get to the top. We look at the top of many of these commercial real estate companies, and it looks pretty one-dimensional. Crew just came out with statistics that said in commercial real estate, women are represented by 37%, and that number drops precipitously the higher up you go. And we're here to talk about that and talk to the women who have made it to the top and are continuing to go to the top, and really ask them all these important questions that we can apply to our lives and our careers. So thank you so much, Caroline, for joining us today. It's an honor. It's a privilege. Tell me a little bit more about what you do in your role. How many people do you manage? Just give me a good idea of what you do day to day.
First of all, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. Happy to talk about my career, my trajectory, which is not linear, and is hopefully going to inspire some people. I manage a team of about 400 people. I think it's slightly over that, actually, because we onboarded 62 people in the last 3 months. So I'm not exactly sure how many people, but it's somewhere around 400 or low fours. And we manage a portfolio of approximately 42 million square feet across the tri-state region and Greater Philadelphia. So really, Connecticut on down to Delaware. That's my region. And I have an amazing team. I would be literally nothing without the wonderful people who work with me. And I owe our success, my success, to all of the people I've worked with over the years. It's really been always such a team effort. And I'm so proud of everybody and what they accomplish. We have a lot of challenges thrown our way. Property management is a very hectic environment where there's a lot of unpredictable things that happen every day. And we face it, we own it, and we solve those problems every day, every week, over weekends, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it's quite an amazing business. So I'm excited to be here and talk about it.
Did you know that only 11% of C-suite across our nation are women? If you want to see change, subscribe to the podcast, comment below, and get involved. Donate now at Allan-Vanderbilt.org. First link in the description below.
That's awesome. And, one of the things we see in commercial real estate is it seems to not be, when you're 5, everybody wants to be a ballerina or a fireman. Nobody goes, I want to be a property manager. It seems to be the career that no one knows exists. And there is a bit of a theme where people just kind of fell into it. So how did you find out about this industry and career, and how did you get started?
First of all, that statement is totally true. I think 97.5% of people you talk to will tell you that they fell into property management. And we have to do something about that because we have, first of all, it's a great career, But secondly, you can make a lot of money, and we need people. We need great people. The people in our business are very passionate, which is, I think, what draws them to the business. But for me, I grew up outside of New York City. My parents used to drive us into the city every, vacation, or, sometimes on the weekends, to go see Broadway shows, to go to museums and events. And I was always mesmerized by the tall buildings. I could not imagine the engineering. I didn't even know the word engineering, but I couldn't imagine the engineering that went into building those buildings. And I was absolutely fascinated by them. Not ever thinking that I would be responsible for any of them ever, but that's how it turned out. I got involved in real estate, commercial real estate, when I was in business school at Columbia. There was a real estate club, and there was a real estate major under the finance discipline. And so I made some friends who were in that club, and they invited me to an event, and it was very fun, but it was also interesting. And I always had this interest in New York City real estate in particular. So I applied for some internships, and I got an internship with LaSalle Partners, which is one of the predecessors to JLL. And it was in property management. And most of my classmates were pursuing careers in development or finance of real estate. But I thought, because I didn't have a background in commercial real estate, that I should do something where I would learn the basics. So I would get sort of this nuts and bolts experience. But what ended up happening is I always stayed in the managerial side of things. I never went to development or the financial side. I always stayed within the realm of management, and I always had an interest in management anyway, and that's why I went to business school. So I worked at JLL throughout that summer, and then they hired me full time. And I worked there for about 3 years, and then another opportunity emerged, going to work for a company that was a tenant in my building on the transaction side of the business, so doing real estate transactions. So I did that for a few years and really enjoyed that, but I missed managing a team. I didn't really have a team. I had a team of brokers out in the field across the US I was dealing with, but it wasn't a cohesive team that I was responsible for, and I missed that. So fast forward to 2010, when I had actually stayed home with my children for about 8 years and done consulting and volunteer work and other things. I put some feelers out to see if there were any job opportunities, and lo and behold, JLL came forward and said, well, if you're interested in coming back to work, we might have something for you on the facilities management side of the business. So I decided that that was something that interested me. I thought I should try that. Interestingly, I hadn't loved property management when I was in it, because I didn't like the adversarial nature of the relationship between tenants and landlords that existed at that time. And this is back in the late 90s.
Yeah.
But when I came back to facility management, it was a symbiotic relationship, because facility managers are executing what is needed for their client, and everybody has the same goal in mind. I did that for a number of years. I became an account manager, and then I came back to property management in 2019, December of 2019, which was 4 months before the whole world stopped, basically.
The apocalypse.
The apocalypse light.
Our version of an apocalypse. And to lead this team has been such an extraordinary experience for me, because I've never met such a, as I mentioned before, passionate group of individuals who are so focused on what they are doing. They are dedicated to their buildings and their clients, and it's truly amazing. So going back to the original question, which was, how did you get involved in commercial real estate, and did you fall into it the way other people did? I would say my answer is more along the lines of yes and no, because I always had an interest in it. I just didn't know I didn't know it was going to end up in property management. But I have a goal of making sure that we have more people, more knowledge about this profession out there and get more people, because thankfully, over the years, we've ended up attracting some amazing and great people to this profession. But with more buildings being built and more complex buildings emerging, we need to make sure that we have the right people in the industry. So I'm thrilled. The other thing that I will say is that when I started in property management, there were not a lot of women. It was very male dominated, mostly because engineers in the buildings sort of emerged into the property or building manager role. Now that role has expanded to include many more skills that are required, which opened it up to a broader group of people. And women have been very interested in that field as a result of that. So, long answer to your question, but that's
a
my
perfect answer. Sure. And listen, I remember the days with, the manager who used to be the engineer with the keys. Is big key rank.
Oh,
That used to be the property manager. And it has expanded. And, for us to be saying, hey, we want more women in leadership roles, we need to be able to backfill all of the other positions in order for us to be able to rise up. And it is a phenomenal career. And I do agree in it. And I think for a lot of young people who are pursuing or looking into a career, this is the job that I feel is like, if you like to be entrepreneurial and you like to kind of be a boss and you like to lead a team and you like to tap into lots of different skills like accounting and engineering, you have a lot of different interests. It's like, this is that perfect blend inside of that space, while at the same time you get a very solid paycheck.
yes.
I really like that part, right? And so it's the beauty of those two worlds kind of colliding, and I think it can really, fit really well for certain personalities. And I think more young adults who are getting degrees and looking at careers like this is a really great channel for them. And I agree with everything you said there.
Well, I also think it's a great career for people who consider themselves generalists. I've spoken to quite a few young people lately who say, I'm interested in everything. I'm interested in finance. I'm interested in marketing. I'm interested in client relationship management. I'm interested in operations. And my answer to them is, you are perfect for property management, because that's what we do. A property manager is truly a CEO of the building. They're operating everything. They're responsible for all of the different service lines. They're responsible for a large number of people. And so it's really a great business and career for people who have multiple interests.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. To ask another question, this one's really cool. What risks in your career did you take? And which ones did you feel really worked out well? And which ones didn't turn out as well as you thought?
Well, I'll talk about two different risks, I would say. One risk was when I was younger and my first child was born. I did go back to work, but at that time, which was in the early 2000s, when I asked if I could work from home or if I could work part-time, the answer was no. And that was crazy because I was effectively a remote worker at the time, because all of my business was with people outside of the New York market. So I would come into New York City to then speak and email with people outside of this region all day, every day. In fact, sometimes I would go home and my ear would hurt because I'd been on the phone so much. So that was sort of silly, but that was the time. That was the culture. That was the time. And my husband and I made a decision for me to stay home which was a risk because I'd spent so much time building my career and going to school and graduate school, and I paid for my own education. But I just took a bet on myself that I would be able to build it back. I didn't know how I would be able to do that, but I knew I wanted to, and I knew that I would be able to. And I believed in myself. So I think that's one lesson for everybody out there, is that you have to believe in yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, other people won't either. How can you convince people to believe in you if you don't believe in yourself? You can't. Okay. So that was one big risk. And it did work out well. I would say, maybe I didn't overall, maybe at the end of my career, I will look back and I will say, I didn't get as far as I thought I was going to get because I did have that hiatus, but it doesn't matter. That was time that was wanted and needed with my family. The second thing that I did, and I'll explain why it was a risk that felt like it turned out badly, but it actually turned out great. So I was an account manager here at JLL, and I had been on an account for about 5 years working with a client. And I had sort of run out of steam, and I felt like I had done everything that I could do, and it was time for somebody else to take over that account. So I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I figured, well, I'll just be an account manager for a different account. So I threw my hat in the ring. I said, just put me where you need me. And that was really a mistake, because you should never put your own career in other people's hands. They will not do for you, no matter who they are. I mean, maybe once in a while somebody comes along and is, will do something amazing for you. But what they did was they put me where they needed me, but it was not a match to my skill set at all. It was a total mismatch. And I think they thought that because I was a strong account manager, and this was a very strange and kind of new type of contract, that I could just make it work, which I did, but it didn't work for me. It didn't work for me. It didn't feel good to me. I didn't enjoy it. I was not happy. And I did everything I could to make it work, but it just wasn't the right fit for me. And it ended up being kind of, not a great experience overall, but it was an experience, and it was something I learned from. And if I hadn't taken that role, I would never have ended up in the role I'm in now. So, I have to look back, and while I was in it, there were times when my husband said to me, "You can quit. I'm giving you permission to quit." Okay, that's never happened in my life. But he was good, and it wasn't really that bad. It was just there were stressors, and but at the end of the day, it led me to this role, which has been the greatest role I've ever had. It's kind of like that song, "God Bless the Broken Road." It's like sometimes you have to go through tough things and tough experiences, and hopefully you look back and you can see how those experiences helped you build strength for the future. And I can definitely look back on that and other experiences and say, yes, that was absolutely a valuable experience, even though at the time it was tough. So here I am.
I really loved that, because I had heard other people giving advice of, just go where you're needed, go where you're needed. And I think what you brought to the table is also know thyself, right? Because when you know who you are, when you know what your strengths are, you know what's going to work for you. You know it's not going to work for you. I certainly know what it's like, right? To be ill fit for a situation or a job or a particular manager. And it's very, very difficult. And so I think that's really great advice. Like when looking for the next opportunity, you can maybe put it out there and say, hey, where are you needed? But maybe have like asterisks that highlight these strengths.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's tough because there was a time a few years ago when I would have said to people, don't work for a bad manager. Don't work for a bad manager because, you're not gonna win. You're not gonna, convince them, all this stuff. But when those times when I worked in that particular role, I worked for a terrible manager, and but I learned so much. I mean, I learned so much about what not to do and how not to treat people. And I do access that every day. I mean, I think about it all the time. What, ways that they could have done things differently, and how I would have done things differently, and I do. And I think about even when I am unhappy with an employee, I think about that bad experience and I think, well, okay, here's how that person would have handled it. So I'm not going to do that. And then I just try to, but the point is you learn from every experience. Now, I would never tell somebody to stay in a toxic situation or a situation where their health is being affected or anything like that. But those stressful, kind of tough situations, you have to stick it out for at least a little bit to try to learn the lessons that you need for the next role.
Agreed. Yes. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that's an important nugget for a lot of the younger people to take from that, because this world is filled with imperfect people.
Yes. Yeah.
Imperfect leaders. And if you bail every time someone's imperfect and maybe they're struggling with more personal things than is advisable in our place.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes if you just bailed every time things got hard, you wouldn't go very far. And you certainly wouldn't be on the path for leadership because you would be starting over and over and over and over again. So
it's true. You got to build that. So there was a quote. I used a quote in my monthly team meeting the other day, which was taking place in Jersey City. So, of course, I chose a famous New Jerseyan to quote, which is Bruce Springsteen. And he said, the struggles you're going through today are building the strength you'll need for tomorrow. And that's really true. You have to look at life and your career and the strength that you need as cumulative over time. You must build your career. You must build strength. You must build courage. You must build confidence. Some people are born with these things, but most people are not. And I see people around me every day who are lacking in confidence. And it comes out in really destructive ways. It comes out in, their lack of courage, you can see a lack of courage in world leaders today. A leader who has to be kind of a strongman is not a courageous leader. That is actually a very insecure, non-confident, non-courageous leader. So that's true in business too. So I just see that poor behavior around, and I realize, you've got to go through the tough stuff to build the strength that you need in order to be a great leader.
Agreed. Turning a page. So let's talk about some things that women do really well. So what do you think are some of the attributes that women bring to leadership roles in general that typically outshine their male counterparts? Like, what do you see really works well for us, and what's a secret sauce or a superpower that we bring to the table?
Well, I think I think one reason women have been so successful in property management and other areas of real estate is that we think of real estate as being about buildings, but it's actually not. It's a relationship business. Real estate is about people because people are critical to running and monetizing buildings. So women are generally very good at building relationships, about understanding the nuances of relationships, adapting to different personalities. We tend to be caregivers in our lives, whether it's with children or siblings or parents, and we know how to adapt to stressful situations. But it's tough. It's tough defining, what makes women different from men in this business because there's so much crossover. There are so many men who get those relationships as well, and there are plenty of women who don't. So I tend to shy away from saying that, it's a gender thing. To me, it's more of a personality, and it's a I don't know, it's a sort of an approach and a way of life. I think women also, particularly if they are caregiving family members or friends, they learn how to multitask really well, and that's required for this business. So I think that's helpful. I think anyone who has empathy can be really, successful here because again, it's those relationships. It's understanding what clients need, what tenants need, what is the nuance to the question that a client or a tenant is asking. What's the real underlying need that they have? So I think there's a lot there. But I have trouble distinguishing between men and women because I see so many men who have those strengths as well in our business. So but I'm really, I guess what I'll say is I'm very happy to see so many women coming into commercial real estate. And, traditionally it was a very male dominated business, and residential real estate was a more female dominated. And now many women are. In fact, I was in a meeting with two clients a few months ago, and we figured out that we all went to Columbia Business School. They went to Columbia way after I did, but I'm older. But anyway, so they did go to Columbia like probably 10 or maybe 15 years after I did. And I said to them, when I was in the real estate program, there were only two women. And they both leaned forward and said, "What?" They couldn't believe it. Because when they were there, it was much more of a 50-50 or maybe even favoring the women situation.
Wow.
No. So things changed pretty rapidly, which is exciting. I love that.
Yeah.
I don't think it's, I think it would be, one dynamic, at least at Columbia Business School, that may have contributed to that was we had a woman who was the head of the real estate department for many years. And she really, I think, drove a lot of that. But yeah, anyway, so things have changed, and I think that's great.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What do you feel helped you stand out while you were moving to the top and being considered for senior leadership roles?
Mm-hmm. So I've always made it my business to be, first of all, nice to everybody. I try to be nice to everyone. It's not always easy. But I'm nice. I'm approachable. That doesn't mean that I'm a pushover, but it means that people come to me with questions and with issues, and I always want to be helpful. And especially when I was in facilities management, I used to put people in two buckets. They were either helpful or not helpful. And I always wanted to be helpful. The not helpful people are the ones who kind of put up barriers and they say, oh, you can't do that. We've never done it that way, blah, blah, blah. When people come to me, I always try to find a solution. And so what has ended up happening is that they come to me for everything. Here in the New York office at JLL, I am the repository for all questions that no one else knows how to answer. And I love that. I mean, I actually love that. I get to interact with everyone. I mean, you should see the first of all the mail that has nowhere to go comes to me, and then I tell them, oh, this goes to so-and-so, or this. I know, it's crazy, but anyway, so it's really about being that easy button, being the person who can get things solved and who gets things done. I think people realize that when they come to me, they know that it's going to get resolution.
Yeah.
The other reason that I think I've had a good trajectory in terms of promotions is that I advocate for myself, like constantly. Actually, recently I've tried to just take a break from it and try to be happy with life, because I realized that I was kind of living in the gap between the past and what I want for the future, and I wasn't really appreciating today. But generally, over the course of the last 14 years since I came back in 2010, I have just been advocating for myself constantly. And I started probably like 2 months after I came back to work, after being out for 8 months. A colleague was leaving, and her portfolio they needed to hire somebody to run her portfolio. And I said, if you give me an assistant, I will run the entire portfolio, including mine. And they really liked that idea. So immediately I got doubled my portfolio. And then it just kept going from there. I kept raising my hand. I kept pushing. I kept looking for the next big thing. There was just that one hiccup where I said, put me where you need me. And that's when things, went a little off, but came right back. And now, I'm way further along than I ever thought I would be. So.
Yeah. I think that is an integral ingredient that you're throwing out there, where it's self-advocacy. And I think also an art form to learn is how to do it and how to do it right.
Yeah.
I know that's something I personally struggled with. I know other people have, where, they do see the opportunity or they want to advocate, but they're not quite sure how to do it the best way. So what is the way to do that? Or, like, how do you spin it so it looks attractive and it isn't like, hey, I deserve that?
Well, I think the key is to stay away from entitlement. That's something that managers really don't like, I think. Oh, I don't like when people feel that they're entitled. It's more about, and I had a great manager a few years ago, about 12 years ago. I had this manager who works for me now, by the way. Who I went to this person and I said, I really think I should get promoted. I think that I deserve this. And he goes, well, why don't you write it down? Why don't you put together a business case for why you should be promoted? And I did. And I got the promotion. But you have to really outline for people sometimes what your accomplishments are. Sometimes you are so aware of everything that you've done, but other people, either it's not front of mind, or sometimes they take it for granted, or sometimes they're just so busy, it's hard for them to really document it.
Yeah.
And I've always tried to kind of document my wins and, keep that front of mind for myself. And I always, in the past, when I was looking for that promotion, when I was trying to get promoted, I was always keeping a running list of the things that I had done. And I took my annual reviews very seriously. And I would write chapter and verse about what the accomplishments were over the year. And it's important to keep track of that stuff during the year because you forget. And then, December or January comes and you're so busy with year end and holidays and everything that you kind of forget everything that happened in February of last year. So just keeping a diary of that. But I don't know what the thing is that every manager and every senior leader is different, and you have to adapt to the person that you're speaking to, the person that you're dealing with. And certain people, the language that you use with one person might be very different from the language you use with another person. So you really have to, that's where the intuition, that's where the empathy and the intuition and the nuance comes in. And maybe that's something that I have, maybe that's a strength that I have, is that I've always been able to understand the people around me and use the right language, use the right approach in order to get what I want out of the relationship or get what I want out of my situation. There are times when you deal with a manager who either is consumed by ego or, threatened by you. And those are toxic situations. And in those situations, you might not get the promotion. You might have to move away from those people in order to continue your trajectory.
Yeah. Yeah. That's rock solid gold advice right there. And I do think that might very well be your superpower. If you can read between every single line.
Yeah.
And that is a rare skill, right? For many of the viewers, if you feel like you don't have that, don't worry. That's a superpower. She's an ass.
But you can develop it over time. I mean, I definitely think I had a tendency towards that, but you can also develop the skills. You have to just put the time in. You have to put the thought into it. Have to recognize that people are coming from different backgrounds, different experiences, different points of view, that they have things going on in their lives. I once said to somebody, they were complaining to me about a senior woman at the firm who was not really treating her correctly, was being kind of toxic or abusive. And I said, try to use this strategy. Think about whatever it is that she has going on that's making her behave that way, and try to have empathy for her. It doesn't mean that she has the right to treat you badly, but at least if you can try to apply some understanding, some human understanding to the situation and not completely butt heads with the person, you might be able to get somewhere. And that has worked for me plenty of times.
That's good. Yeah. That's really good advice.
Yeah. So I always try to just think about where the person is coming from.
Yeah, that's good. Now to the most popular question for most of the viewers, it is, how on earth do you manage the work-life balance? The kids, significant others, aging parents, friends, having a social life. How do you do all of that while you're also working your way up a ladder? And if there's anything I can absolutely advocate for here, is that as you're going up, the workload increases, right? And everybody needs to know the workload increases with each step up. And how do you, what's your key? What's your key to that success of balancing those worlds?
Well, you're making an assumption that I do balance it well. Okay. I don't know if that's I think so. There's a couple of things. First of all, you need to be able to accept help. That's something that my whole life I was very independent for a lot of reasons. My brother had some issues growing up, and my parents were focused on him, and I could kind of survive on my own. So they allowed me to do that. And then I developed all these skills, and eventually I just became a very independent person. But then for me, when I was working and everything, there was no issue with that. But once I became a mother, that's when this idea that I could do everything myself really had to change. And that was hard. That was a very hard change for me. I did not want help, but I had to learn how to accept help, and that accepting help didn't mean that I was weak or incompetent or anything like that. It just meant that there's a lot going on. And so I think a lot of parents, mothers in particular, have trouble letting go of the responsibilities of the household. And if you're going to be successful in all areas of your life, you have to allow others to come in and kind of carry some of the burden of those areas. So it could be with childcare, it could be with elder care, it could be just with household. If you're working a crazy job and you are making a good income, and you can afford it, maybe getting some help around the house to clean, or just making sure that if you have a partner, that your partner is pulling their weight, that they are doing stuff. Now, in my situation, I happen to be very good at laundry and vacuuming. So I am the laundry and the vacuuming person. But there are other things that my husband does. He has actually developed, he was not somebody who cooked at all when we first were together. Now he cooks most of our meals at night. So it's just, you start sharing. And then on the flip side of that is you have to make time for relationships and friendships, client relationships, all the things that you need to do in your life. You have to carve out time for them. So people said to me, how did you ever have time to write a book? How did you do that? You've worked full time, 2 kids, dog, blah, husband. And I said, I made the time.
Yeah.
I figured out that there were some chunks of time on weekends when I could do the editing, and I just forced myself to do it. It's very easy to say, I don't have time for that. I haven't had time. I mean, how many times do you hear yourself say, I haven't had time to, I can tell you right now, I haven't had time to make, the optical appointments for me and my daughters. That is not true. I have had many times when I could have called Costco and made the appointment. I just didn't. So you have to make time for things. And then you have to also accept that you're not going to be great at everything. You're not going to be perfect. But if you can't live like that, then you have to give something up. So I've accepted that I'm pretty good at a lot of things in my life. But the one thing the 2 things that are most important to me are my family and my job, because my job enables my family to live a great life.
Yeah.
And then everything else, I just make time for it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really good. I think what I took from that is, number 1, whatever you can delegate or get additional help for.
Yeah.
Definitely look at those opportunities, try to maximize on those opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
The other is, really make sure you know what your priorities are, right? And make sure to make the time for that. And, and I've spoken with many people, and even myself, like, I schedule out my life sometimes a year in advance, right? And sticking to that and making sure that your schedule is in integrity with where you're trying to go and what your values are. And that's really what I took from that, where it's you really have to have those hard lines where I say, I want to do this, I can do this. Actually make sure you actually follow through on that time with each of those things. And I think you also mentioned where it's like, there's also a high level of editing, right? Where some things are going to fall away and that is okay, right? And that's another thing I really took from that, because all three of those things are critical ingredients to balancing big stuff.
You have to prioritize. You definitely have to prioritize. So, yeah.
So what would you say on the way to the top? What are some things that someone should avoid? Like, what are the things that you would say you should avoid while trying to go to the top within your career?
I would absolutely say that drama and gossip and things like that in the office don't do anything positive for anybody. I think those are very destructive things. Creating drama, creating issues that HR and people have to deal with. Those are, I find it's very disappointing to me when people on the team act, in those sort of immature ways. And it doesn't happen often. It really does not happen often at all, especially in property management, because we're kind of, we're not all in one office together. We're spaced out.
Yeah.
But I would say those are kind of destructive things. What else to avoid? I would say just, what you should be drawn to are great people, smart people. Surround yourself with people who are smarter than you, who can help you get things done. And I really feel that's what I've done. I have an amazing team of people around me who all know more about property management than I do. I'm here to lead the team. I'm here to run the business and the financials, the P&L, to interact with the senior leadership. But the day-to-day is owned by these very intelligent, bright, smart, awesome people I work with. So I would say, on the flip side of avoiding, something that I would go to is surrounding yourself with really great people. But as I said, this is a people business.
Yeah.
End of story.
And to give mad props to JLL, as you know, I have the privilege of working with so many of the incredible people that are on your team. I can absolutely advocate. They are superstars. They are bar none, absolutely phenomenal. They absolutely kill it. So and that speaks volumes as someone who's on the outskirts, just recycling electronics today. Your people are phenomenal. They really are over at JLL. So you really built an incredible team. When someone's thinking about going to like the next step, how long should someone consider staying in their role, or what is it that they should be looking for when it comes to taking the next step? Should they stay in a role for a certain period of time? Should it be about what they know? What's that sweet spot for people to understand when looking at taking the next step for themselves in their career?
I think the standard 2 to 3 years in a role makes sense, but I have been in situations, and I know others have been in situations where the role has grown over time, so that it's not really the same role at the end of 4 years or 5 years. It's a different role than what they started with. So I think the key to keep in mind is that you always want to be growing. You want to be learning and growing. Because if you're not growing, you're dying. I don't think it's that bad, but one of my clients said that to me once, and I was like, huh. So, but I think you always want to be progressing. Now, there have been times in my career where I felt I wasn't progressing, but the situation worked really well for my family at the time. And so I kind of wrote it out a little bit.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's amazing to make that sort of sacrifice for family or situation. I think that that's wonderful. I do look at resumes, and if people move companies every like 1 to 2 years, I find that somewhat problematic. I want to know why. I want to better understand why that happened. I have hired people in the past who had that kind of jumping around every 2 to 3 years to different companies, and kind of regretted it, honestly. So you want to, at a company like JLL, you have the opportunity to move around in the same company with different opportunities. So that's something that people really like about JLL.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that, but still, the key is that you want to be growing, you want to be learning, you want to be contributing, and then you want to be moving forward, So I think 2 to 3 years is kind of what I consider the minimum.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. I mean, that's a good rule of thumb.
Yeah. But, when I was in a role that wasn't right for me, that I didn't, where it's just the stars were not aligned, I was there for less than 2 years, and that was fine.
That's still very good information, because I have to be honest with you. There are generations, I won't name them, that really think 3 to 6 months is the longest they're going to stick out in a situation that may not be their favorite situation.
Yeah.
And that's, I think the important part to note is that it's just, that doesn't serve you, right? And that's what I'd like to send a message of. What is a way for you to handle things in a way that will serve you best? And if you're hopping around every 3 to 6 months, it doesn't serve you in any capacity.
It's disruptive. And you don't really, to me, I've always felt like 6 months was really when you finally get in a groove at a new job. So
Yeah.
I don't think if you give it less than 6 months, you're not really giving it a try. Well, so, and it is true. You can know within 6 months that it's not a long-term thing for you.
Yeah.
But if there's an opportunity to learn and grow, to me, it makes sense to stay. But there are other factors sometimes. Sometimes there's, toxicity, there's, relationship issue, there can be all kinds of different factors, but and doing 1 6-month, tour of duty is not terrible, but I wouldn't make a habit out of that. So that's what I would say. So, but on the flip side, there are people who do the same job for 30, 40 years. And that's fine too. There's nothing wrong.
That's your
goal. If you find a job where you make a ton of money, or you just make a stable amount of money in a union job, or a job where you're going to get a raise every year, that you've got the protections of benefits and retirement plan and everything, and that really works for your family. That's phenomenal. So
Yeah.
and every day is different. There are plenty of those jobs that exist in property management where people do work in buildings for 30 or 40 years. And I think that the reason they can do that and not get bored or, want a change is that every day is different.
It is.
Every day is different in property management. So you never get bored. You cannot get bored in property management. It's not possible.
It is. Oh, the stories you could tell.
Yes. In fact, when I first started in property management, I remember my mother asking me, "So how do you know what to do every day when you go in?" And I said, "I don't."
It tells you what you're going to do that day.
Yeah, exactly. I may have wonderful plans for that day, and the whole thing gets upended because a freight elevator breaks down, or there's a slip and fall, or somebody calls out sick, or
Yeah.
there's just any number of things that can happen.
Oh my gosh, we could write a book on that one.
Yeah.
So, this is a very small industry. I think a lot of people look at it and think it's huge, but it's like a middle school. Everybody's talking, everybody knows each other. And I know that can be really daunting for a lot of people when they are ready to look and they are ready to move. So if somebody does feel like they are ready for the next step, how do they pursue, looking for the next role, trying to get interviews, et cetera, without alienating or ruining a relationship with their direct managers and the people who they're working with? Because oftentimes, if you are looking for another role, the people who are your direct managers, they're going to be out of an employee. And how do you manage that? How do you do that while maintaining the relationship and keeping the integrity of it?
I think it's important to always be open and honest with your manager about what your plans are, what your aspirations are. I tell my managers all the time that, I have other aspirations. I want to do more. I always want to do more. I just don't know what I would do. But but I think it's important to have those conversations so that it's not just, like out of left field. Particularly when you work at a company and you want to stay with the company and you want to do more in that company. And that's what I'm talking about when I say that. You have to let your manager know if you're going to start applying to roles because, at JLL and I'm sure at other companies, if you do apply for a role internally, your manager gets a notification. So don't you want to be the one managing that conversation? But if you are looking outside of the firm, well, first of all, you should always try to see what opportunities are available within the firm that you're in. If you can see that there's the writings on the wall, there's just nothing there, there's nothing available to you, you've looked up and down and there's just nothing there, then sure, I think, going out and looking for a role and taking a role that is a step forward, any manager worth their weight should agree that that's a good step for you. And too bad you're losing this person, but you couldn't provide opportunities for them. So I think, that's really.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, this is very concentrated, I think, to a lot of women in property management, right? So, one of the things a lot of people aren't as aware of and familiar with is when you're a property manager, you are that CEO of that building, and
Yes.
you're in that building, and you're only really interacting with your small management team, whether it be an assistant manager, an admin, a tenant coordinator, your engineers, and typically lots of vendors. So you don't have a lot of network. You're not like talking with everybody in a company.
Mm.
And the person who you are working for and trying to please is typically the owner of said building, right? So inside of this cloistered environment, when a woman's doing a really great job at running that building, both the management company and ownership, they kind of have, the incentive that if they're doing such a great job, we should keep them in that role, right? We don't want the good job to move, right? The way this environment is created, it's almost like once you're succeeding really well, it almost sends that message like, well, we don't want the great to move, but it does kind of keep these succeeding managers kind of stuck in a spot. Right. And inside of this, they selfishly don't want to lose the stability of the building.
Right.
How does a woman in this role doing a great job, does she start to try to change the perspective and the views of both her company, who she's not typically interacting with on a regular basis like her team, and even ownership, that they can be used and utilized in a more leadership type role? So how does someone take that jump from property manager to director, right? And now go into a more senior role? What do they do, and how can they show the skills and help to break out of this somewhat stuck kind of scenario?
It's all about stretch assignments, raising your hand, volunteering, being out there, being in close contact with the person who is in my role running the region, and ensuring that that person has the courage to be able to have those tough conversations with clients, you know, and has the courage to create that domino effect, because that's what happens if you move somebody out of a role and you want to backfill them with somebody from the team. Then you got to backfill that person, and then you got to backfill that person. It takes forever, and it's a pain. It's hard, and most people don't want to do that. So, I think number one, we have to make sure that people who are in leadership positions who make these hiring decisions have to be people who are confident and courageous and put their people first. The clients will be fine. The clients know, and if you explain it to them properly, they know, they will understand that it's better to create an opportunity for somebody who's ambitious and keep them within the firm than to lose them to either a competitor or another owner operator or, a third party company. At least if they're still on the team, they're available for transition and to help us. And it's good for them. It's good for them to know that their client was supportive of this and ready for them to move on. I actually have a situation like that I'm going to have to address very soon, where I have a general manager who wants to move on, and going to meet with the client and have this discussion. And I know they are going to be upset, but I'm going in kind of prepared for whatever happens, because it's important for this person to move on. This person must move to a different role and continue growing their career. And that's the most important thing to me. And the client will be fine. The client will be great, because we'll get another really great person in there who will bring a new perspective and who will bring different skills and, maybe have some other ideas. And that's good for the building. So it's just about making sure that you have the right conversation, the right plan, the right leader who is able to have those tough conversations. And then you can get it done.
Well, that actually touched me, because I can see how you, as the leader, are actually going to bat. Like, I can see you already. You're like, I know.
I know, I'm getting a little like,
this is the right thing for this person. And, it is hard. And that's something for people to really recognize, that you do need leaders that have courage.
Yeah.
You do need leaders who can have the hard conversations that no one's going to enjoy, but they believe every word of what they're saying is the right thing for not only just the employee, but it's the right thing to do as a human being, as a citizen of this community.
Yeah.
And for the company, it's the best thing for JLL. It's the best thing for everybody. And like you said, have the confidence to know that the landmark's going to be fine, right? That They're going to be fine. Yeah. There's a sea of incredible talent that is being honed and curated. And within JLL, I'm sure you have incredible people to move there. And it is a total pain in the butt. Lisa.
It is, but it's the right thing. I think you hit the nail on the head. When you do the right thing, then you don't have to worry about anything else. Yeah. Doing the right thing, it may not work out because people will resist change, or they don't want it, or they don't like it, or whatever it is. But if you just keep in your mind, I'm just always going to do the right thing. And I think that is something that drives me. I'm always looking to do the right thing. And I do get upset, and I don't understand when people don't do the right thing, especially when they don't do the right thing by their employees or by me, or by, if I see it happening, it really bothers me. And I want to take those people and say, just do the right thing. Do what's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do what's fair. Do what is fair. Do what's fair and right. And you will win 99.9% of the time. True. It's easy.
Goodness me.
It's easy. This is not difficult stuff.
Oh, so true. So true.
Yeah.
Have you ever been stuck in your career where you had a gatekeeper who really didn't want to kind of let you move upward or even outward? Have you ever come across a gatekeeper that you felt really stuck with, and you were able to find a way in, around, through, that you could give advice for other people who feel like they have a gatekeeper that's kind of holding them back from the next leadership role, either within the company or outside the company?
Yeah. So I have been aware of those types of situations several times over my career. And I've had people come to me and say, I had this opportunity, and, the account lead said no. And it happened to me once with a person who wanted to move to another country where I actually needed somebody. And I started talking to the person, and it got shut down really quickly by a senior leader. And I thought, wow, that's too bad, because this was really a good move for this person. This was actually going to work out really well. I think that's where the lack of courage in leadership comes into play, where people just get so afraid of having those conversations with their clients. That's where that gatekeeper kind of thing comes through. It hasn't happened to me because I won't let it happen to me. So, people will come to me and say, like, oh, they're making me stay on this account, blah, blah, blah. And, when I was on an account that I didn't want to be on, I got off of that account. I got out of there. I was going to get out of there one way or another, and I just found my way out. So I, not to say that I would never let somebody do that to me, but it would be very unlikely. It would be very unlikely that it would happen to me, because I'm always thinking, what's next? How am I doing? Am I learning? Am I growing? If I'm not, then I am moving on. Now, that gets harder as you climb the ladder, because, the ladder of success is actually a pyramid. So as you keep climbing, there are fewer and fewer roles. So, for someone in a leadership role who wants to move to the next level, like people on my team who are in leadership roles, where are they going to go? I'm here. I'm sitting in this role. So where are they going to go? Well, maybe they can find ways to, add to what they're doing, or, volunteer for stuff. But And it's the same thing for me. Where do I go? My manager is the president of property management, and his manager is the CEO. So there's not a whole lot of places to go. But, that's not a gatekeeper thing. That's more just the reality of climbing the corporate ladder. And then you have to figure out what you're going to do. Are there ways that you can make your role interesting to compensate while you figure out what that next move is? Or do you stay because you're happy and it works for your family and you're making good money? So what the heck, just write it out. I mean, there's a lot of different things you can do, but the gatekeeper thing, that is real. And it, you should not allow people to be your gatekeeper. You have to take control. You drive the bus when it comes to your career, not other people.
That's good. That's good. I'm going to do a 2-for-1 special now.
Oh God.
So, one round. I know we're short on time. So, one of the things that come up with a lot of the people in leadership where it's like, how did you get tapped for that next role? There was one common thing that kept popping up where it was like a mentor, threw their name in the hat. They showed me the way to do it. So I'm going to do 2-for-1 special where, when someone is looking for a mentor, and or a mentee, what are some of the things a mentor looks for in a mentee, and what are some of the things that a mentee should be looking for in a mentor? What is that cross-pollination? What are some of the characteristics so that when somebody says, hey, I really wanted to create that relationship on both sides, what are the things that both can be looking for?
Well, first of all, both people have to be in it. Okay. So you have to be present. And I've had situations where somebody will say, oh, can you speak to my friend? They're just like you. They want to go back to work or something. And then I get on the phone with this person and they're like, they don't have anything to say. And I'm thinking, your friend doesn't really want this. Why did you must have been having a conversation with the person and said, oh, you should meet Carolyn, blah, blah, blah. No. So each person has to be present. So when you're choosing either a mentor or a mentee, it has to be somebody who is actually interested in being in that role, because it's a very symbiotic role. Mentors and mentees learn from each other. I can't tell you how many times mentees come to me with the same issues that I am dealing with personally. And it's like the universe has said, okay, now I'm going to force you to make a decision about that, or I'm going to force you to figure that out because you're not doing it on your own. And then I have to figure it out for this person. And it's fascinating. It just happened to me like 3 times in the last 2 weeks. It's crazy. But so I actually don't even go to mentors because my mentees are the ones who help me. It's crazy. But the other thing is, mentors and mentees that's like a conversation. That's a relationship. That is people talking to each other. Something else that also is really important out there is people who advocate for you, people who talk about you when you're not in the room, and let people who are senior to you know that you are somebody to be watched. And, I've had a couple of people sort of do that. I had one person, Linda Aronson, who was my predecessor in this role. She was somebody who was always like pulling me in. She's, oh, you need to go to this. Oh, you need to go to that. Oh, I'm retiring. Do you know anybody who would be interested in my job? I was like, yes.
Yes, Liam.
So, those types of people who are thinking about you when you're not around, it's really important too. And those are special people. So you want to grab onto those people. I knew Linda was that type of person. So I was always connecting with her and checking in and making sure that I was in her sphere, in her radar so that I would be top of mind for her. And so when those opportunities came up, she did reach out to me, which was phenomenal. So that's really something. Those types of people are pretty rare. So you kind of have to figure out who they are, see who the people are who are connecting people, and be around them.
They are rare. I agree with you. And I have to say I'm in a very privileged position where I get to see, I think from the top down, all the players and all the people in these senior roles within commercial real estate. And the thing that I love is that I see all the same people who are active, out, attending.
Yeah.
And then the people who don't ever go, they never come. Right. And it's a fascinating thing to witness where you're like, wow, there's these executive people who are always there, always available. You can reach out to them, you can email them, they're receptive. And then there are the ones who you could email them and say, I've got a pot of gold that I'm trying to deliver to you, and you won't get a reply.
Right.
And they're also the same people who you won't see at most of the functions and the events and things where they could even commune with their own teams, right? Where they sometimes they're so high up they never even meet their own team members, and if we went to some of those events they'd meet them, and they don't go, and it's just a fascinating thing that I've been able to witness. And you're absolutely right. You have to look for the people who have that in them and exhibit all of those.
And I have had people say to me, I have this woman manager and she doesn't advocate for me. She doesn't help me. And I say, well, not everybody is cut out for that.
Yeah.
Some men are phenomenal at being mentors and coaches to women. So it's not just women. Some women don't have that capability. Some men don't have it. Some men do. It's just like, it's not a gender thing. It's a, and the key is to have those people in your corner and advocating for you when you're not around.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
That's the key. Yeah.
It's really good. Well, we are right at the wire. I want to let everybody know, Caroline is an incredible leader. And I have the privilege of working with her, and thank you so much for coming. But, I also want to let all of the women out there know just how incredible JLL is. If you are looking for an opportunity in commercial real estate, if you are in a degree in college and you're trying to figure out which company, JLL is one of the first ones I'd say. If you want a great company that's going to put women in leadership roles, JLL would be my number one pick for you. And I couldn't recommend it more. And I cannot thank Caroline enough, not just for this, for all that you do, for everyone who you mentor, for all of the wisdom that you share. You are, such a shining star in this industry. And I cannot thank you enough. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate every ounce of wisdom that you've shared with us today.
Well, thank you very much. It was my pleasure. And I hope to make some more new connections as a result of this podcast. So thank you for inviting me.